Transit Partnership, not October 22nd, it is, I'm sorry, it is February the 25th, and I'd like to call this to order. And the first order of business, I'm going to read the notice of electronic meeting due to COVID-19 state of emergency. The governor has declared a state of emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the nature of this declared emergency makes it impractical or unsafe for the Regional Transit Partnership to assemble in a single location. This meeting and the required public hearings will be held utilizing electronic virtual communication with the Zoom software application in accordance with virtual meeting procedures and policies outlined in item 4.0-01 of the Virginia State Budget, House Bill 29, as effective April 24th of 2020. The meeting will be recorded and made available to the public at tjpdc.org. All right. And if everybody could mute themselves so that we don't hear, we're hearing some interference from someone. So I would appreciate it if you could mute yourself, at least for now. And welcome. We're glad to see all the smiling faces. And with that, Jessica, will you call our attendance, because I know we have to do that for the record.
Yep, so I'm going to go ahead and call attendance, and if you could unmute yourself to say present, and then mute yourself again. Diantha.
I am here.
Lucas Ames.
Here.
B. Lepisto Kirtley. Oh, I see she's in the waiting room. We'll come back to her. Lloyd Snook.
Here.
Nakaya Walker.
Present.
Great. Neil Sherman.
Here.
Thank you. Randy Parker. No Randy. Okay. Becca White. I believe she is not here. And B. Lepisto Kirtley. I see that he is here.
Here.
Great, thank you. Garland Williams.
Here.
Karen Davis.
Here.
Jim Foley.
I am here.
Sandy Shackelford.
Here.
And Sarah Pennington.
Here.
Great. That's it, Diantha.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our first item on the agenda is always matters from the public, and folks have 3 minutes to speak. Jessica, do we have anyone who wants to speak this afternoon?
I did not receive any comments or emails from anyone requesting to speak, but you can just go ahead and unmute yourself if you would like to.
Is there anyone who would like to speak that didn't have a chance to sign up? Not seeing anyone, Jessica. I guess we're good. With that, then, the first actual item on the agenda is the TJPDC update, and we are happy to welcome Christine Jacobs to do that. And Christine, I'm trying to find you on the screen. Where are you? There you are, waving your hand beside me. And as we know, we didn't exactly say goodbye to Chip. We just sent him away a little further away. And Christine is now, I think your official title, Christine, is Interim Executive Director of TJPDC. So with that, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. And, thank you for having me here for this. I haven't yet had the pleasure to meet all of you in person or virtually. So I'm Christine Jacobs. I'm the Interim Executive Director. Previously, I was the Chief Operating Officer and Director of the Housing Program here. So I'm intimately familiar with the programs of the PDC. I have not had as much opportunity to sit on the transit discussions. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to learn with and alongside you all. Just to update you, Sandy Shackelford will be sitting as the MPO staff on the RTP. Obviously, Sarah will continue doing that for rideshare, and Jessica is our lead staff member for the RTP. With that said, as you all have probably all experienced at some point with major transitions in organizations, we're going to be as diligent as we know how to be to make this transition as smooth as it can. But we welcome constructive feedback. Please reach out to me directly. I'll look forward to contacting most of you all to get one-on-one meetings and get to know you a little bit better. But until then, please keep communication open with us as we ride through this transition and continue to do the good work that RTP has been doing. With that said, I'll pass it back to you, Ms. Diantha, unless anyone has questions.
I guess I can open it up. Does anyone have any questions about process or organization for Christine? All right, well, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. And I do want to take a minute to just point out that Karen Davis is here. Karen will be representing JAUNT, a new face at the table as well. Karen, do you want to say anything?
No, I'm thrilled to be a part of the RTP. I was a part of it when it started, and it's been wonderful to see it grow over the years. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, great. And I guess if I start welcoming new people, I get into real trouble here. I don't know if there's anybody else that's new here, but I think those are the two new folks that are at the meeting today. The first actual item on our agenda then for approval is the draft of the meeting minutes. This was the date that I was trying to read earlier. So these are the minutes from October of 2020. And are there any comments or edits that folks need to make? Anything that jumped out at anybody? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the October 22nd minutes.
The anal part of me says that we should correct B's spelling at the top. It's correct in the body, but where it says under committee voting members, you left out an E.
Oh, that's an excellent catch.
I have one item two on page 4 in the section where it talks about I'm asking about the APCs. We got it's saying ACP, it's automatic passenger counters. So it's just a type, flipping the letters.
Oh, so that's just a typo correction.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. That's why we take a look at them. Any others? Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the October 22nd, 2020 minutes as amended.
So moved.
I think that was Lloyd. And a second from someone?
This is Lucas, I second.
Okay, we have a second. And I'll just ask for a voice vote on these. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we have our minutes approved. And Jessica, I'm going to turn this over to you for the next item, which is our membership discussion.
Great. Thank you, Diantha. And I'm going to share my screen because I really like to have notes when I talk to all of you. So we are going to take a look.
And we can see it, so that's good.
Perfect.
Right.
All right, great. And just because I won't be able to see all of you in the corner of my screen, if you have any questions or comments, please just speak up. So before we discuss membership, a quick note about the distribution of agendas and packets moving forward. So back in October, I sent out our usual meeting reminder email with the full packet of meeting materials attached. But because that packet was so large, a number of you did not receive it and didn't have any reminder of the meeting. At the same time, I didn't receive any undeliverable messages, so I didn't know who hadn't received it. So we tried to come up with a plan moving forward. So this is what I would like to propose, and I would like your feedback on it. What I plan to do to ensure that everyone gets all of the information they need is at least 1 week before our meeting, I'll send out 2 reminders. The first will be a calendar invite that will include all of the Zoom meeting information and a link to the website, the RTP webpage, which will have the full packet there. There will be no attachments to that calendar invite, so that should go to everybody without any issues. Then I'll also send an email reminder, which will look just like you expect it to look. It'll have the full packet attached. It'll have the Zoom meeting info. If that full packet is particularly large, it might not go through to some of you, but you'll at least have received the calendar invite. So are there any questions, concerns?
We can't see folks, so speak up if you do. I think that sounds like a good plan to have the 2 emails. I think that's great. Anybody have any concerns? Not hearing any, Jessica, so I think we're good.
Works for me.
Okay,
Great, so we don't need to take a vote on this or anything. We can revisit this in the future if need be, so we will
Yeah.
just move on.
yeah, that'd be great. And I don't think we need a vote on this. I think this is fine. Thank you.
Great. So now moving on to membership. So since our last meeting, which was way back in October, we've reviewed and started to clean up our RTP webpage on the PDC site. And we're starting with the membership section. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side of my screen is just a screenshot from our webpage with everything updated. So what we've done is update the website to identify the chair and the vice chair. We have updated all of our voting member information, and the biggest change is that I have removed any non-voting members who have not attended RTP meetings in the last year or 2. Anyone who was listed as a non-voting member on our webpage and had an active email address remains on our email list, so they can continue to hear everything that the RTP is doing. And they're welcome to contact me because we can add them back to the website at any time. Does anyone want to recommend any changes, or have I misspelled anyone's name on the committee website?
Jessica, this is Karen.
Hi.
Just when everyone has finally learned to put JAUNT in all caps, we've changed it to just a capital J and lowercase AUNT. It's part of our new rebranding. So,
Great.
So anyway, just if you could catch that as you go through your materials, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for letting me know. We'll make sure to make that change. Anything else?
So Karen, what you're saying is it's a capital J and then small AUNT. I have to get it in my head, so I have to say it.
Yeah, right. So long story. Yes. No, it's just JAUNT and kind of embracing what JAUNT represents. And so that'll be the way we write our name now.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Does Garland wear 2 hats?
Garland wears 2 hats. Yes. Is that your question, Jim?
Yes. So CAT staff and Charlottesville Student Transportation?
Good catch. Yes.
So I
Because
have left that one open. Garland, you have been representing student transportation for Charlottesville, I think, but if there's someone who is better situated to speak to those particular issues, you're welcome to assign someone else to that.
Okay, thanks.
So
I'm
you can think
trying
about it.
to give you more work, Garland.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, any other comments?
so Garland, you'll get back to Jessica about whether to put you there or to put someone else there.
You can just leave me there. It's fine.
Okay, so you need to add Garland either there or put it under, however you want to do it, Jessica.
Sounds good.
Okay, all right. Any others?
All right, if anything else does come up, please feel free to email me, but we'll move on. So let's see. There has been a request from a community organization to be added to the RTP as a new non-voting member. That request comes from the Charlottesville Area Alliance, who would like to appoint Peter Thompson to the RTP. So if you are unfamiliar with either the Charlottesville Area Alliance or Peter Thompson, here's the information they gave us. The Charlottesville Area Alliance was formed in 2016 to lead the advancement of an age-friendly community. Working with Albemarle and Fluvanna counties and the city of Charlottesville, they successfully applied to be a member of the AARP World Health Organization Age-Friendly Network, bringing best practices to our local area. They have over 30 partners across the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Charlottesville Area Alliance co-founder Peter Thompson of the Center is being recommended as the CAA representative to the RTP. He currently serves on the Places 29 Community Advisory Committee and has served on the CAT Advisory Committee and the RIO 29 Small Area Plan Committee, among other community service roles. So to give you guys a little bit more information, reviewing the bylaws for the RTP, the membership section under section 2 says, lists out all of these different potential non-voting membership organizations. It does not include the Charlottesville Area Alliance. But if you keep going through the bylaws, section 3 says that the partnership may recommend additional voting or non-voting membership to the partnership as is deemed necessary to carry out its duties. So we interpreted that as reading that we can use a simple majority vote of the voting membership to add CAA to our non-voting membership if that's what the RTP would like to do. So I'm bringing us back to this slide with all the information about Charlottesville Area Alliance and Peter Thompson, if you guys would like to discuss it further.
Peter, would you like to, I know everyone knows you, but would you like to introduce yourselves and just talk a little bit about what the Charlottesville Area Alliance is in case folks don't know? I think most of us are, but there may be some that aren't as familiar.
Thank you, Diantha, and thank you, members of the RTP, for considering CAA for non-voting membership. I'm riding in a car on the way to escape winter as I speak, but glad to be able to zoom in and join you. The CAA, as stated, is to supplement that a little bit. We look to be a resource for organizations such as the city, the county, the health district, the planning district, and the RTP to help take an age-friendly lens to discussions that are critical to the holistic dimensions of wellness that WHO and AARP have identified through their data-driven process. And we identified in a survey, both in doing our own work and also in looking at needs assessments that others have done in the community in the last several years, that out of the 8 dimensions of an age-friendly community, that the 3 priorities that are identified now are housing, transportation, and social engagement. So with that in mind, we were looking to not create a new structure to look at transit, but to align ourselves with the partnership to be a resource for you and for our community.
Peter, can you just talk, I know they're 30 and I'm not trying to test your brain here, but could you give the board the organizations that belong to the Alliance?
Sure. Again, the City of Charlottesville, Albemarle County and Fluvanna County, the Tjpdc, the Blue Ridge Health District, Centera Martha Jefferson Hospital, JAUNT, JABA, the Center at Belvedere, Alzheimer's Association, private organizations such as Home Instead, some of the senior living such as Westminster Canterbury, but it's also the Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors, Chamber of Commerce, the United Way, a lot of other groups that you may not think of. They may not be focused solely on aging as an issue, but understand that aging is impacting their ability to meet their mission, and that their mission, however, whatever work you're doing, is helping either improve or declining how age-friendly our region is. So it's a breadth of membership at this time. We aim to expand it, holding a little bit until we create a little more infrastructure to proceed with our work.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to open it up for discussion. What we have on the agenda then is supporting their request to join the RTP as a non-voting member. And this would be Peter Thompson would be representing the Charlottesville Area Alliance. So thoughts from you all? And I can't see anybody, so you have to just jump in.
Sounds good to me. This is Lloyd.
This is Randy. I'll make a motion that we accept them as a non-voting member of the Charlottesville Area Alliance.
Second.
And who was the second from?
B.
B. Thank you, dear. All right, and I'm going to call for a voice vote because I can't see your faces. So all those in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? So, Peter, I believe you have it.
Thank you, and I look forward to working with everybody.
Great. And I hope you can you stay for a little bit more of our meeting? I know you're in a car traveling, but.
I am intending to stick around, yes.
Great.
As long as I have a good internet connection.
Welcome, and we're thrilled that you reached out. That's great. All right, so Jessica, I think we're good to move on to the next agenda item then, which is the DRPT Technical Assistant Grants, which we're pretty excited about it. And you're going to go over these with us.
Yes. So thank you, Diantha. All right. So the PDC received 2 transit planning grants from DRPT. The first is the Albemarle County Transit Expansion Feasibility Study and Implementation Plan. So the purpose of this project is to conduct a feasibility study and create an implementation plan for expanded transit service to population and employment centers within Albemarle County, particularly the Pantops area, Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, and along Route 29 North, specifically between the city-county line and the UVA Research Park. Innovative transit options to include on-demand service that emphasize accessibility and responsiveness to customer needs should be investigated alongside traditional fixed route options. The budget for this project is just over $106,000, with half of that money coming from DRPT as grant funding and the other half coming from Albemarle County as match. The timeline for this project is about 10 months. The project has officially just started and will run through the end of the calendar year. And that timeline is really strict because we're hoping that that implementation plan will put a transit provider in the position to apply for demonstration funding with the next round of funding applications with DRPT. Okay, so this is a slide showing the immediate next steps for this project. So the RFP has already been sent out to DRPT bench contractors, and today is the due date. I've already received a couple of proposals, so we will have some to choose from. We have a selection committee composed of Tjpdc and Albemarle County staff who will review the proposals and select a consulting team sometime in early March. We have an advisory group made up of a variety of stakeholders who will be appointed by Admiral County Board of Supervisors, and Tjpdc staff will function as project management. And that advisory group will meet with the consulting team that's chosen and begin their work starting either in late March or early April. So just to give you a better sense of what tasks will be included as part of the consultant's final scope of work. So public outreach is going to be a major component of this project, and that's going to happen in at least 2 ways. There will be an interactive project website that will inform people about the project and allow people to leave feedback about the project. And there will be either online or in person, but I guess we're all assuming online workshops where people can give feedback on the project as well. The consultants will work on a needs assessment for the study areas, focusing on existing and projected demographic, land use, and economic data. There will be feasibility studies for at least 2 transit service options for the study areas, and ultimately an implementation plan for the single preferred service option. All right, are there any questions on the Albemarle County Transit Expansion Project?
And Jessica, I would just add that because this is Albemarle County centric, no motion that's needed on this by the RTP. We will be giving updates to the RTP, but this is pretty much Albemarle County centric. And in fact, there's an urgency because of the deadline of January 1. So we're really trying to get this one moving forward pretty quickly.
Yep, that's absolutely accurate. We just want the RTP to be informed about this project, but that Albemarle County advisory group and Albemarle County staff and elected officials will be making the big decisions on it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Are there any questions?
Well, this is Lloyd. I note that we'll also be talking about a Charlottesville grant in a little bit, and I hope that there will be a fair amount of communication between the 2 segments.
Between the 2 projects?
The two studies and so on, because obviously, although the study is quote Albemarle centric, Albemarle is Charlottesville centric and geometrically. And what you are doing and looking to explore will need to work with what Charlottesville does and is going to be exploring during essentially the same time frame.
Yeah, thanks for that point, Lloyd. I think that you'll notice that there's going to be some overlap on the advisory groups and I will be working on both of the projects, so I'll be able to go back and forth with things as well.
And I'll also say here, as I've said a number of other times, my view of what Charlottesville needs for downtown Charlottesville's benefit is some kind of sort of a promotion of a park and ride kind of a system where folks are parking in the county and riding into the city. And so for us, truly, the answer is going to have to be a regional answer. It's going to have to involve a lot of participation from Albemarle County. And so I hope that I don't know where the Charlottesville centric version of this study is going to be going, but I hope it, as I say, I hope it's going to be working a lot with what Albemarle is studying.
So Lloyd, the quick answer to that is that the next grant we're talking about is Charlottesville, Albemarle, and UVA. And that's get at what you're wanting. So we'll go on that one unless there are any other questions about the Albemarle transit expansion, which really deals with 29 North, Pantops, and Monticello as a tourism center. But you're right, there is overlap, but I think we're going to get there without any problem.
Good.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, Jessica, let's move on to the next one.
Great. So the other grant that we received is for the Charlottesville and Admiral Regional Transit Vision Plan. And I do just want to emphasize what Diantha just said. This isn't necessarily Charlottesville centric. This is for the whole region, which also includes UVA. So the purpose of this vision plan is for local leaders, transit agencies, and a wide variety of stakeholders to collaboratively develop a clear vision for the future of transit in our region. Early work will gather data from a variety of sources to identify the types of transit service that can be supported on travel corridors throughout our region. And the final work product will be a regional transit vision plan document that identifies short-term, long-term, and extended long-term actions the community must take to support the community's vision for high-quality transit. The budget for this project is $350,000, with half of that money coming from Drpt as grant funding, a quarter of it coming from Albemarle County as local match, and the remaining quarter coming from the City of Charlottesville as local match. The timeline for this project is about 18 months. So it begins about now, and it will continue through the end of the next fiscal year, which will end on June 30th, 2022. So this is a slide similar to the last one with the immediate next steps, not all of the next steps, just the immediate next steps for this project. So we are still in the last stages of finalizing agreements and MOUs with all the necessary parties. That's going to get done very shortly. There is an RFP that will be sent to DRPT bench contracting firms. And the major piece of that RFP is a draft scope of work, which we're going to go over in detail in a little bit. Then we're going to give those consulting firms about 3 or 4 weeks to respond to the RFP. And then a selection committee will review proposals and select a consulting team. So there's an asterisk by selection committee there because that's one of the things we're going to ask you guys to vote on today. We have a proposed selection committee, and we would love the RTP to discuss and potentially vote in favor of that selection committee. Then the Regional Transit Partnership will be very involved in this project. The RTP will serve as the official advisory group for this project. And one of the first steps will be to have the RTP meet with the chosen consulting team, review the scope of work, and begin working on the project. One of the other things we're looking at is potentially creating a new subcommittee of the RTP to last for at least the duration of this project. So this subcommittee would represent a diversity of perspectives and opinions in the region that are not currently represented on the RTP, and they would speak directly to the consulting team. So, and this one also has an asterisk because we're going to vote on that later in this meeting as well. So that would happen. The RTP and that potential new subcommittee would begin working with the consultants either late March or early April. Okay, so let's see here. this is a visual representation of the draft scope of work for the Regional Transit Vision Plan process. As you can see, it's broken up into 3 phases, each with its own set of work products. So in your packet, I had a slide describing each of the work products in detail, but in the interest of time, because we have a big presentation coming up after this, and to allow you to see kind of how each of these pieces all fit together, I'm just going to briefly talk about each of these as we look at this slide, but you do have those slides in your packet if you want a more deep dive into each of these items. So looking over here at our initial work products, let's first talk about the land use assessment and the transit propensity assessment. So these are intended to be documents that gather technical information and quantitative data about the community, such as the number and density of workplaces, vehicle ownership rates, et cetera. And these will inform our intermediate work products. The vision statement will concisely define the community's understanding of what high quality regional transit means. What does high quality regional transit look like? What does it feel like? What are the outcomes which it results in? This will be the result of collaborative discussions among the RTP, the stakeholder group, and the general public. All right, so moving into intermediate work products. So as we all know, there are different types or categories of transit service, like express, high frequency local, low frequency local, or demand response, among others. These types of service function in different ways and meet different needs. So the corridor specific service recommendations are intended to be a visual document like a map that uses the initial work products to determine what type of transit service can be best supported on each corridor in the region. If that sounds really familiar, that's because this is very similar to what Richmond did with their vision plan. The travel demand models, which are another intermediate work product, would compare a fully implemented recommended scenario. So if we fully implemented everything that was recommended in that corridor specific service recommendation document, and we'll compare that to current transit service or a no build scenario. And that'll give us a quantitative way of comparing what we have to what we might have. And then finally, we have our final work product. So this would be the document, the Regional Transit Vision Plan, and it would summarize all the previous work products and recommend short-term, long-term, and extended long-term actions that the community would take. So whether that's transit providers or elected officials or localities or the RTP, recommend actions they could take to fully implement the community's vision of high-quality transit. Are there any questions? I know that was a lot of information to throw at you guys. But I do look for any feedback that you might have either today, tomorrow, or over the weekend, because I would love to get that, make any edits to this plan and get our RFP sent out on Monday.
I do want to add that when we were discussing this at the very beginning, we were able through DRPT to add the word young people, which indicates students. How that might play out, we're not sure, but we know that there is a need to move at times students, young people around our community, whether it's for internships or whatever it might be. This is visioning and what the possibilities are. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that, and that's one of the, it's going to be important for the city and the county schools to be at the table for this as well. We talked about that when we were discussing this scope of work at the very beginning, just putting that out there. So we never know where we may end up. But we do know that the higher our ridership, the more money we can pull down. And there are needs out there. So
how are the subcommittee members going to be selected?
I'm sorry?
The
Sorry.
members, how are they, what is the selection process?
So we don't have a really strong selection process yet. So I'll talk about this a little bit more later, because I'd like to put in front of you a list of potential subcommittee or potential organizations that could be represented on the subcommittee. But I think that, you know, the way I'm envisioning it, and Diantha and Lucas, you can jump in, really anyone who wants to come and be a consistent member of that stakeholder subcommittee would be welcome.
Absolutely. We have a long list we're going to go over. This is going to be very open to the community.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to move on. Okay, so as I said, we need a selection committee to review the proposals that we receive from the DRPT bench contracting firms and choose our or select our consulting team. So this is the recommended roster for the selection committee. It includes both Albemarle and City of Charlottesville. It includes our transit operators, CAT and JAUNT and University of Virginia. It includes the Albemarle County Office of Equity and Inclusion, and it includes us, the TJPDC. These are the names of the people who would be representing those organizations or their designees. Does anyone have any questions or want to discuss?
Are we, any thoughts about this one, folks? We're happy to open it up. Of course, this is the group that's just going to select the consultant, right? I say just, it's a really important, but it is the selection committee. Where we get the public engagement is a much different list of folks.
Yep, this is just an initial step, and then the actual work will begin once the consultants start working.
Any comments or thoughts?
I guess I have, I mean, if Trevor can represent our school interests, I'd be supportive of that.
Well, for the selection committee, I think you're right. We were trying to keep the selection committee to not so many people, Jim, because this is the consultant, and I think Trevor could probably do that. Same thing goes with some of with Garland, because when we get into the stakeholder groups that are actually doing the work and giving input, we want you guys to be specifically at the table, right?
Sure. No,
yeah.
I think Trevor can represent student transportation in Albemarle adequately. More than
doing my best, Jim.
Oh yeah, I've got extreme confidence in you, Mr. Henry.
Any other comments on this one or thoughts?
Diantha, this is Randy. Just quickly, does it make more sense for me to do this or for Karen to do this? I'm just raising the issue. She might have a better.
No, we have you as the rural representative, Randy, deliberately. Now you guys
Okay.
change that, but we
All
were
right, that's fine.
representation from the rural area.
Okay, I'm here for the sticks. That's fine.
That was what the thought was, right?
Okay, that's fine.
So Jessica, do you envision that we take a separate vote on this, or how would you like to do that? Or
Yes, I think it makes the most sense to take a separate vote on this. We will not be voting explicitly on the scope of work because what we send out as the scope of work as part of the RFP isn't the final product. That's not the end result. So we'll still have a lot of negotiating to do with the consultants. So this can be its own thing.
all right, and then we'll have another vote on the stakeholder subcommittees when we get to that one next.
Yes, that's right.
So if there's no more discussion or questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the recommended selection committee.
I move that we approve the recommended selection committee.
That's
Second.
And that was a second, I think, from Lloyd.
Yep.
All right, I'm learning voices. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Aye, yes.
Any opposition and any abstentions? Okay, now comes the bigger part, Jessica. So that one passed.
Great. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the stakeholder subcommittee. And Nikaya, if I don't answer any of your lingering questions, please just jump in. So the TJPDC staff propose adding a subcommittee to the RTP for at least the duration of the Regional Transit Vision Plan project. This committee would offer a diversity of perspectives from a wide range of transit stakeholders not currently represented on the RTP. So the RTP would remain the official advisory group to the consulting team. This isn't to displace you guys at all, it's just to add to it. And the proposed stakeholder subcommittee would not replace engagement with the general public. So this does not mean that we don't talk to the general public. This is in addition to, and I think it would complement any work we do with the general public. The proposed stakeholder subcommittee would meet regularly, allowing for ongoing collaborative discussion between stakeholders and the consulting team. So that's just a quick overview of it. And then this is a list of potential stakeholder organizations. It does not have to be, you know, we can go beyond this, but this is just a potential list designed to get people thinking about all of the different considerations for a transit vision plan. So what I want to do now is have a discussion about if you guys like the idea of this stakeholder subcommittee, and if so, is this the right list? Am I missing anyone? And so on.
So I would add under the land use development and housing, CRHA could go there. And then the for the historically underserved communities, FAR could go on that list.
Okay. And I have to make sure we want to, this is where we want our school divisions. We want Charlottesville and Albemarle Public School System under education as well. And maybe, I don't know, I'd let Jim and Garland talk about it, but maybe they would be able to cover the Charlottesville Albemarle Technical Education Center pretty well. I mean, I'm just saying, this is a huge list. And the only other comment I would make is under safety, Charlottesville Police Department and emergency response, I called Chief Lance today and asked if he felt like that there was a place that this was appropriate work for the Albemarle Police Department. And he said he did not see any need to have the police department at the table with this stakeholder organization. Now, having said that, he said if there was any need for data or information, they would be happy to provide it. But he said he just didn't see this particular stakeholder organization in the Albemarle County Police Department wheelhouse necessarily. Just a thought.
And on behalf of, I mean, I haven't talked certainly with Charlottesville PD about it, but I would tend to agree from our perspective. I don't know, for given what I expect this this grant to be dealing with, I don't see either CPD, well, certainly CPD and emergency response wouldn't both be required. I'm not quite sure I understand what the overall purpose of getting literally about 40 different organizations potentially involved.
Right.
I'd rather
I didn't see any need for emergency response either. I asked Chief Lance about that as well. I'm not, I can't speak for CPD, but I did talk to Chief Police, our police chief, and he said no. He said this was just not being his wheelhouse. Now, data would be, if you wanted some kind of data, that would be fine.
Right.
Diantha, as a guy who participated in the Richmond project, this is a huge list.
Right. We need to whittle this down, don't you think?
just a little bit. I mean, this is comprehensive. I mean, I Jessica did a wonderful job, but it's just when we're trying to work through potential scenarios, having this many folks, we'll have to take it to the public anyway. So there will be ample opportunities for public feedback as a part of the
right. So I think that was what Jessica was trying to do, but she wanted our input to do that. And I'm trying to whittle down to the safety group right now. Right. I think you're exactly right, Garland.
Yeah. I mean, because we're gonna start to get into where we got overrepresentation with having so many groups that overlap.
Right.
So
that's right.
I mean, you're looking at UVA, you've got 3 potential pieces from UVA by themselves, the hospital, the research park, and the university by itself.
Right.
And then even University Transportation. So that's 4 that will be, so that's it's starting to get pretty heavy in just one particular area.
I agree. So how would you all like to look at this? Do you want Jessica and a group to take a whittle at this and come back? Do you want to try and do it ourselves today? What do you all think? I think it's too many people because the stakeholder groups can still reach out to any group they want, right? for public engagement.
Yeah, I think I agree that it's pretty unwieldy, but I think it might make more sense for a smaller group or Jessica to try and whittle it down. I think it would be challenging to do here right now. But and some of the overlap is obvious. I appreciate the need to be comprehensive. And I would lean toward, although I appreciate the stakeholder component, I would definitely lean toward groups that represent directly users of the system. And so I think that would be helpful as well, just to take some of the institutional nature out of some of the orgs. But other than that, I think that Jessica and maybe a small group of people whittling this down, I'm not sure how this would work well. But it's a nice comprehensive list.
Well, I think it's a great list to have and for public engagement and outreach. So what would you all like to do? You want Jessica, do you want to identify a couple of people from our board to work with Jessica to whittle this down a little bit? Or what are your all's thoughts?
I guess my main question is, what is the actual purpose of this group? What is the subcommittee of stakeholder organizations expected to be doing?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. And let me know if this answer doesn't go far enough. But what I'd like for this stakeholder group to do is to represent those perspectives that just aren't adequately represented on the RTP itself. I think particularly amongst our historically underserved communities or under land use and development, those perspectives are not, they're not as well represented on the RTP as they could be if we had a smaller subcommittee with people who are working with those groups or with those topics regularly.
I guess my question is a little more basic. Are there expected to be meetings of some group that these people would be added to add, so that they can add their perspectives? And if so, on what issues, at what stages? Yeah.
So I'm envisioning this as a subcommittee meeting. So they might meet perhaps, every other month as a subcommittee, not part of the RTP, its own meeting. They would meet at least a couple of times directly with the consulting team so they can have that conversation with them, like a back and forth about things. I think one of the places where they have the most importance would be in the creation of that vision statement. So when we're thinking as a region, what does high quality transit look like? What are the measures that matter to us when we're talking about high quality transit for our region? These are the people who should be talking about that, in addition to all of the great people on the RTP.
So I can tell you though, just from my experience on boards and doing work, you'll never get a mission statement from this many people.
No, so to expand on that, Diantha, it is not intended for the stakeholder group to alone make the vision statement. That's what we're hiring the consultants to do, to get information from the RTP, from the stakeholders, and from the general public, put all of that together and give us our concise vision statement that speaks to what the whole community wants, ideally.
So to go back to try and move us forward, because we do have a presentation, does anyone see, or do you see in the regional employers and businesses, land use and development and housing community, those big titles or designations are appropriate? And then within that, if there was a way that Jessica and maybe another couple of people could look at under those topics, leaving out perhaps safety, right? Because that maybe designate people in those and come back to us with a smaller list. Does that make sense? Just trying to figure out this.
It certainly makes sense to get a smaller list. The exact mechanism for doing it, I don't have a firm grasp on. I would maybe delegate that to Jessica, but I would say, again, maybe I'm not understanding how this group would work, but it would seem to me that no more than, say, 2 people from each one of these categories would really be, would be able to be a workable group. It's still going to be larger than what I would regard as workable, but it will
Right.
be, provide for more diversity of experiences. So that's good.
So I guess my understanding, just for my own wrapping my head around this, Jessica, my understanding is that the stakeholder group is going to work directly with the consultant.
Yes, that's correct.
And they have the ability to bring people in from the community, from any group that they feel like is necessary to talk to, right? And to engage in public engagement, right?
Mhm.
But they would be the core group that would work with the consultants.
They would not be the core group that would work with consultants. The RTP will still maintain its role as the official advisory group, and there will still be general public engagement. This stakeholder group is just to represent those voices that are already engaged in either thinking about transit or transit adjacent topics.
But the RTP is not going to be going monthly to a meeting with the consultants and doing the
No.
work. This stakeholder group is the group that's going to be working with the consultants.
The RTP is intended to meet with the consultants regularly. They are going to keep you guys updated about how the project is going and seek your input on next steps.
Right. But that is updates. That's not actually meeting with the folks and working out the plan and I think we're probably saying the same thing, we're just saying it in different ways here. Okay.
Mhm.
So thoughts, folks, because we do have a presentation here. Any thoughts about Jessica and whomever?
This is Randy. I agree that I'm just trying to wrap my head around what I just heard. Does that mean that the City of Charlottesville, for example, is not a stakeholder organization? Or JAUNT is not a stakeholder organization?
So yes and no. Anyone who's on the RTP is not going to necessarily be part of the Stakeholder Subcommittee, although they can join the Stakeholder Subcommittee if they want to. However, because you're members of the RTP, you're going to have that direct connection to the consulting team as we work through the project. You guys, the RTP and all of the people you just mentioned, all the organizations you just mentioned, those are going to be still the official advisory group working on this project.
So may I just, I didn't realize that. You're going to need the transit agencies to be on this subcommittee. Because you're going to want data and information directly working with the consultants to help move the project along. Because they're going to be asking questions like, can you operate on this street? So it's going to get down to that detail. So you're going to really need the operator being there.
Yep, and I think that it sounds like we still have a little bit of work to do, but that should be something that the transit operators are going to be able to do as part of the advisory group.
Okay.
I'm thinking of it as 3 layers, right? So we have our the foundation is the advisory group, which is the RTP. You guys are the ones who are, already very engaged in thinking about transit and coordinating amongst each other. And that's going to be our foundation for the vision plan. And then we also have this layer of stakeholders who are, very informed on these issues and or the communities they work with. And they're going to speak directly to how their areas or their how their communities can benefit from changes to the transit vision. And then we have the general public who are going to throw just all sorts of things at the consultants. And all of those things are going to be included in our final plan.
So I guess I was confused as well. I didn't mean to confuse anyone. I'm sorry, Jessica. I was confused on what you were suggesting here. So
may I ask one thing? And I know I don't want to belabor this because I'm a part of that large presentation that is the CAT presentation, not the Kinetics one, but the CAT presentation that's going to happen at 5 o'clock. But there's a technical team that needs to happen. And I assume where is that technical team? Because that's the group, that's the transit operators that are going to be working with the consultant. Is that part of is that the advisory group or is that the stakeholder group? Where is that technical team that's doing the work?
So I envision that as the advisory group, but it sounds like people are asking really good questions and I don't want you to feel like you have to vote on anything or commit to anything without being fully informed. So it sounds like I need to come back to you guys with a bit more information and a clearer plan, or at least a clearer way to explain what we're envisioning. But I'm also sure that all of these details are going to get worked out as we start seeing proposals from our potential consulting firms.
So this will come back to us, right? You'll take a look at this, reach out to some folks, take a look at this, and then come back to us with another a proposal.
Yes, and I would like to encourage anyone who is interested in working through the stakeholder subcommittee topic to reach out by email, and we'll set something up so we can discuss it further.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments from folks? Because I do want Garland and everybody to have a chance for their presentations. All right, so this will come back to us. And then, so Jessica, we don't need to vote on that. And do you want to, well, I guess we'll just put that whole piece off until next time.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so we'll move on then to the 2021 meeting schedule.
All right, so proposed meeting schedule was in your packets. Basically, it just says that the remaining meetings through October would be at the usual time, the fourth Thursday of the month from 4 to 6 p.m. And the November and December meetings fall on holidays. So what we've opted to do is cancel both of those and reschedule with a single meeting on Thursday, December 2nd, still from 4 to 6 p.m. So I think this we decided does not require a vote, but we would like some discussion if this works for people.
And I think, folks, the main change is just to drop the November and December normal meeting and split the difference and have a meeting in early December.
Yeah.
Does that work for everybody, or do these?
I think it's brilliant, and I think the county supervisor should do that too.
Okay, any other thoughts about this? And I don't need to vote on this, but we wanted you to have the dates and then specifically look at the December, going on and canceling November and December, and then having the early December meeting. So hearing no objections, we'll go with what B said and we'll assume this is brilliant. And we will move on. All right, thanks. All right, then we have a presentation, and I'm not sure who's presenting. It's not on my agenda. So Jessica, or someone needs to introduce them for me.
So I'll take it from here, Jessica, if you, all right. So
Thank you,
this is
Carla.
actually, no problem. So I would ask that everybody think about this as the CAT presentation. So this is Charlottesville Area Transit presentation. We hired a consultant little over 7 months ago. One of the things I wanted to do is try to get some better data and work through a model where we can figure out how to start to turn around our declining ridership. So this is the presentation. So I'm going to introduce two individuals that are on Ben Chambers with Kimberly Horn, who is our primary, and Kinetics Transportation Group, James Baker, who's actually going to do the presentation for us. The presentation is divided into 3 sections. So the first part of the section is basically what we talked about in getting you some data, which is APC driven. So there's a dashboard that was created. And as we're talking through this, I'm going to ask that Ben go ahead and start pulling that up, share his screen. Jim Baker pull that up and go ahead and share his screen. And then there's a quick other presentation that's designed around just giving you a kind of a quick overview of what we have to work through as a team as we are thinking about transit planning. And then the third part is what we have built the proposed 22 budget on. With that, you see over to your right, Jim Baker with Kinetics Transportation. So Jim, take it away.
All right, thanks, Garland. Hope everyone can see my screen. Yeah, we, as Garland mentioned here, he brought us on board in the summer to look at CAT service performance. And the first thing we did was we gathered ridership data with some automatic passenger counters that were temporarily installed on the buses, just to get a handle as to just what are the ridership characteristics that CAT's experiencing during COVID. And so we built this interactive dashboard, which is really was helpful as we worked with Garland and his staff as potential service recommendations for FY22. I just wanted to kind of spend a few minutes to show you just kind of the dashboard, since this was such a major input into the service recommendations we'll be talking about later here. So there's several dashboards created here. This first shows, this first is just kind of a key performance indicator dashboard to just kind of understand how ridership has been going on a route level basis, how the productivity has been. And we pulled that data for 3 different time periods: summer 2019, fall 2019, and summer 2020, to get a sense as to just how COVID has impacted CAT ridership. And if you look at summer 2020 compared to summer 2019, CAT lost about half of its ridership. And in response to that, Garland and his team has reduced CAT service by about 30% there. But I would, and that's just been kind of obviously common throughout the industry there in terms of those kinds of losses. But there are starting to be some rebounds now. With that data that we're pulling from the buses. Are you able to see my screen still?
We see it. It's pretty faint, but I think I can see it. Okay, we're good. This is a little better. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we were able to collect stop level ridership data. And so this is just a dashboard that just shows the boarding and alighting activity throughout the entire CAT network. And with this dashboard, we're able to drill down and look at ridership on a route level basis, by time period, by day of week, by direction. So we're really able to slice and dice the data in a lot of ways. And we've got several dashboards here that just where we can look at how productivity is by time of day, by stop. Just again, lots of ways to slice and dice it. That was really helpful to understand just where ridership is, being retained the most during COVID, where it's been impacted the most. On-time performance, certainly an important thing for attracting ridership. So we were able to pull on-time performance data. This dashboard here shows all of the CAT routes, and the green means that the buses were running on time, or those routes. The yellow is early, and the red is late. So being that this was collected in the summer when traffic was lighter, there was a lot of early arriving buses at various time points. We're able to look at it on a trip level basis as well. This is just looking at like Route 7, where you can just kind of see by trip how that on-time performance is looking on a trip basis by direction. So we created, there's a number of other dashboards we did as well, but this just wanted to kind of give you a flavor of the type of, data analysis we were doing here as we were working with Garland and his team this summer.
So I'm going to interject for 1 second. So this was, I thought, the kind of the fundamental pieces that we needed to do before we would be able to really start drilling down and making any recommendations. So this, I know Diantha had a concern early on that she wasn't able to see information. This was just the basic what transit agencies are supposed to be able to provide, the people who pay for the service. So this is kind of our way of getting our foot in, getting foundational information so we can actually build from here. Now, the temporary APCs that we had on our buses was a very small sample, which is why we're not sharing this really with the total public yet. But as we roll out our APC project and roll this out to all, this information will become very readily available to the full public and everyone.
I'll just add as well, just these have been set up in a manner as well that Garland and his team will be able to update this on an ongoing basis and expand that database that he just talked about there as well. So it'll be really helpful and effective to understand, to continually monitor ridership and see how it's rebounding. So that's kind of, again, a flavor of the analysis that we did. Next, I wanted to just share this one of 2 PowerPoints here. We thought it would be helpful for Garland and his team to put together a PowerPoint that basically presents what's, what we think about when we're designing transit service, what's good design principles and practices, so that, more of an kind of an educational piece, if you will, so that, as Garland's meeting with various people that are asking, making requests about service at this place or that place, that there's can be, helpful to understand what, we as transit professionals are looking at. So, so the first thing we did here was just kind of like, what makes transit attractive for someone to use? And really it comes down to, determining, if a person's going to take transit, the demographics of the area, the trip characteristics of the maker, of the person that's making that trip, the price and availability of the service, and the quality of service. So under demographics, we're looking at, of course, densities, not only just overall population densities, but minority, low income, no auto ownership densities, characteristics like that. And we do have this information in those dashboards that I was just showing. Trip characteristics, what's the purpose of the trip that someone's making? Are they, just, is it a single trip to and from work, or, is it trip chaining where they're going to stop at the grocery store and the dry cleaners and all that? Because that has a big influence as to whether transit's going to be, potential, even beneficial for the person making the trip. What time they're traveling, how many people are traveling together, all those factor into if someone's going to choose transit. And we pulled some information from Atlanta, from some work that some data that I had, just as an example, that was showing how, home-based work trips typically, like in the Atlanta region, are, over 13 miles in length, double home-based others and more than double non-home-based trips. But, home-based trips is, really only 15% of overall travel in the Atlanta region. But when you look at who's using transit, it's, 44% of the riders, using transit in Atlanta are, making that trip to and from home, to and from work. So, even though it's a smaller percentage of the overall trip making characteristics, it's a very important trip component when looking at transit, because it's much easier to capture those trips by transit if it's a home to work trip.
And just to go back to that slide, help me with what your HBW, I know it's me, but what is HBO and NHB? I mean,
Sure.
they're probably pretty obvious, but.
Home-based work, so a home to work trip.
Right.
Home-based other, so that could be a home to shopping, a home to school trip.
Okay.
A non-home-based, okay, like, shopping to, the daycare or places like that.
Okay.
Price and availability, someone's gonna, be evaluating what modes are options for them. And certainly on price, there's a lot of hidden costs that people don't really think about in terms of automobile costs. It's just not the fuel, but the maintenance of the car, insurance, licensing, all that sort of things, as opposed to transit where, with CAT, buying a 12, 30-day passes would cost $240. So, certainly there's a, potential cost savings if you're able to, use transit there. Quality of service, very influential as to whether someone will use transit. and we've identified 5 areas under quality of service that we focus on as transit professionals. That's travel time and reliability, how frequent the buses are running, how direct is the routing, the stop spacing, and span of service. So travel time and reliability certainly has a congestion by time of day really can influence and adversely impact travel time. We as transit planners there, we want to build in recovery time at the end of each bus trip, so that if a bus is running late because of congestion, it can hopefully get back on time for the next trip to help make it more reliable. So those are some of the things we look at. Travel time, it's kind of interesting. You just as you're waiting for a bus, you may be waiting several minutes there. It may feel a lot longer because you're just standing around waiting for the bus. As opposed to when you're on the bus, the travel. So people just perceive travel time much longer when they're waiting for the bus as opposed to when they're riding on the bus. And then when you have a network that results in a lot of transfers, especially transfers to routes that do not operate that frequent, that has a significant impact on ridership there. Having that certainty that you only need to get on one bus and not have to make a transfer helps for sure in terms of attracting transit ridership. Frequency also influences ridership. We show here in green, anything 15 minutes or better. It's relatively frequent service. People don't feel the need to be checking the schedules and timing their trip, as opposed to the 16 minutes or beyond. That's when you start to need to really plan your trip much in greater detail. The direction, how direct the routing is. Certainly just, having a route that's fairly direct will help make it more competitive with an automobile trip. But there are times where, you just need to introduce some deviations in the route, because there's some key destinations that warrant that deviation. This example on the right here is an example of a route in Atlanta where every other trip makes a deviation either north or south of that road there, because there were key destinations in those areas. Loops, we really, as and when we're doing route planning, want to avoid big one-directional loops, because that may work okay for if you're traveling in one direction, but it creates a lot of extra travel time if you're traveling in the other direction. Some loops are okay if they're fairly tight and not not too much out of direction there. But certainly bidirectional service is most preferred. And then stop spacing, where possible, where feasible, it's beneficial to consolidate stops just to help with that transit travel time and help speed up that bus a little bit more if you're able to do some consolidation. And span of service, that's very important as well for attracting transit ridership. Good example is someone that's working at a store at a 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 9 o'clock at night shift. Well, if the bus is running at 3 o'clock but it's not running at 9 o'clock, you're not going to be able to capture that person on transit. Weekend service as well helps attract ridership. One of the big things in our industry is the discussion of frequency versus coverage. It's certainly frequency is going to help attract more ridership, but at the same time, coverage is also important as well. And I guess the point I'd like to make here is that we don't really see it as an either or option there. That there's just going to be areas where you're going to need to provide some that coverage, because of it's maybe serving a low income neighborhood or an important destination with a social service agency, political considerations, things like that there. But certainly there's always kind of this balancing act as to, should you concentrate your resources, with frequent service, in key corridors, or should you spread it out to provide more coverage within the community? And again, it's never really a either or option. It's something you just have to find the right balancing.
I would just say this is something that we all struggle with, especially with the new state model, meaning that they're rewarding for more ridership. So, your tendency would be, if you really want to talk about just getting ridership done, you would really focus on your high frequency corridors and turn your frequency up to prompt people to use it more. That the example would be looking at how our trolley route, which runs fairly direct from the university to downtown, is our highest ridership route because it's so direct and it has such a high frequency. If you do that every other place, then our ridership potentially goes to the roof. But that also leaves coverage areas where people need service. So we're struggling with this all the time because we don't have an unlimited budget. We have a finite budget that we've got to balance to.
There are sometimes some opportunities. This is an example here where, perhaps in some, depending upon the situation, you might be able to combine two routes on the same corridor to get some frequency. But then the slide on the right there shows where if you keep them apart, you're kind of expanding coverage there. People that, have greater access to transit, in the person, in the scenario on the right. We also thought it'd be beneficial to put in here just a little bit about how transit is paid for, and that there's really three components of cost to keep in mind. There's the capital cost, but also the annual operating and maintenance costs, which can get very pricey, as I'm sure you all know, and then the state of good repair costs to make sure things are staying properly maintained. So capital costs, of course, being associated with the physical assets, the vehicles that you're purchasing, the bus stops that you're building, elements like that. The operating and maintenance costs, again, associated with the daily operations. And a large part of that is going to be associated with labor costs. I'm trying to, I can't forget it off the top of my head, but I think it's about, 70% or so of agencies' costs is typically related to labor. Non-labor is, fuel and parts and supplies and such. CAT, their annual operating budget is around $8 million. So that works out to where adding 1 hour revenue service is approximately $80 an hour. It's also important to keep in mind that there's federal Title VI requirements that you just can't go about putting in new service without taking into consideration Title VI impacts there. Are there any disproportionate or impacts to minority or low income areas? As Garland said in one of our sessions on this, it's not like he can just do whatever he wants there. That every service change needs to to keep in mind Title VI requirements. So with that in mind, there, with all those elements in mind, there, we just looked at CAT specifically in terms of those service quality elements. And the first being travel time and reliability. And there are some routes there, the 5, 7, 8, and 10, 4 routes that do travel through shopping centers, through Pantops and Barracks and so forth there, where it does certainly slow down those routes. At the same time, they're providing good front door access to those shopping centers, but it does, have an adverse impact in terms of the bus running times.
So I'm sorry, Jim, just out of interest, routes 5, 7, 8, and 10, I have no idea except the one that goes to Stonefield. So I'm assuming Barracks Road, Stonefield, Fashion Square Mall, help me with this.
Yes, yeah, so 5-7, and they're running up the US 29 corridor, they're going through Barracks, they're going into Fashion Square Mall, Stonefield. 8 goes into Stonefield, 10 is over on the east side going through Pantops.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure. And then, another thing we noticed is that there's very little recovery time built into CAT schedules. So if a bus does have some delays on a trip, it can be hard for that bus to get back on schedule for the next trip. Now, that really hasn't been an issue recently because of COVID and traffic's been lighter than normal. But as traffic's returning, one would expect that to become more of an issue. And then, we looked at how routes transfers work. I noted before about the travel time being such an important element there, and how transfers can adversely impact ridership. And CAT does have a number of routes that do meet at the downtown transit center at the same time to help facilitate quick, easy transfers. But there are some routes that operate at odd frequencies, like where you're never going to be able to get a time transfer on a consistent basis with other routes. So that's certainly something else that we were looking at. Frequency and span of service. This chart here lists all of the CAT routes on the rows there, and then it shows the frequencies they're operating at and how long. So this is pre-COVID service levels. So Route 1, as an example, starts in that 6 a.m. hour and ends in that 9 p.m. hour, and it's running 60 minutes all day. You can see, those reds, Route 4, Route 9, there's periods when that was running at 70-minute frequencies. So getting back to that last point, you can't make a 70-minute route meet with a 30-minute route on a consistent basis all day long. The green is the routes that are operating at 30-minute or better service. I think a key thing to highlight that Garland mentioned earlier, the trolley and Route 7, which is a US 29 corridor route. Pre-COVID was running at 15 minutes for the trolley and 20 minutes for Route 7, and they were carrying 60% of CAT's ridership. As far as the directness of routing, there are some good examples. Route 3 runs south from downtown along 5th Street, very linear, no out of direction travel, which is, ideal. Route 2 that also runs south of downtown along 5th Street and back up Avon. It's a big one direction loop, one of those things that we like to avoid when planning transit service. There are some routes that make some fairly significant mid-route deviations that take people out of direction. And a few routes with some split alignments in the middle of the route, and a few routes with large direction loops there at the end of the line. So those are some of the things we would like to begin to try to address as we look at potential service modifications, which we'll be getting to shortly. Stop spacing and accessibility. When we looked at where CAT stops are, they seem fairly appropriate, about every quarter of a mile, which is ideal. But certainly, as the picture shows on the right, there's some examples where stops with no sidewalk, which impacts accessibility to the stops. And of course, in a town like Charlottesville with the rolling hills and the street network, a stop may be a quarter mile from your house, but because of the street network and topography and such, it may actually be further to walk to that stop. So those are things that we always have to take into consideration. And then finally, just want to acknowledge that there was a TDP that was prepared for CAT back in 2018. And there were a number of recommendations there that did try to address a lot of the issues we just talked about. And so we tried to, build upon that and the recommendations we're going to be sharing in a minute with you all. Probably the one area where it differs, one of the things that you'll see in our recommendations is rather than have a route operate at 30-minute service in the peak periods and 60 minutes in the midday, if feasible, we'd rather see it operate 30 minutes all day because, Charlottesville being a university community there, there's not as much of a drop off in ridership in the midday as like you have in a larger city where you have a larger portion of those transit riders being work commuters. So that's that presentation. Garland, do you have anything to add before we go to the next one?
No, I would just say that this is kind of that was the nuts and bolts of how we look at things before we are designing. So the next piece was, this is the presentation we have actually already presented to Trevor, Kevin, Andy, Laura, the team over at Albemarle County, and we talked through a number of these issues. This is the same presentation. This service level is I need to get in front of City Council and the Board of Supervisors if you're willing to do that to really talk about where do we go from here. These are recommendations that we're making now. This is not trying to contradict or discount the larger planning process that's going to happen. That's 18 months. But we are in a real need to start to turn around our declining ridership. So we're looking for ridership, and we hope these service changes that are being recommended right now will help us to stem that tide of decline and start to turn it around to get it back to where we are we're increasing our ridership to work on that model that comes from this state to get us more funding. So this is the proposal that was pulled together.
So B has a question, I think, and I would like to stop for questions right now, Garland, before we go into this next section, just to make sure people didn't have any questions about what they just saw. So B, I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Baker, also for your presentation. I just have a question, something I've seen around mainly Albemarle County, but maybe including Charlottesville, is the lack of amenities, where people are just standing there next to a pole. There is no covering, there is no place to sit down. And if you've got groceries or small children or you're older, and hell, if you're younger, you want a place to sit down and wait for the bus to come. Also inclement weather, which we tend to have. And do we have any plan to be able to have more, amenities at the bus stop? I know I mentioned that when developers want to build something on 29, I mentioned building a ridership or a bus stop with a bench and everything. But any plans to increase that?
Yes.
Garland, I'll let you take that one because we're having ongoing conversations right now.
We are. So Diantha has been real key about on the county side that we need to be more purposeful about getting amenities put in place. We're working on that plan right now. So one of my staff that I hired was a new hire. His name is Steve McNally. Actually was a capital guy at GRTC. He's coming over. We are looking at putting in a standard bus stop package, and we're working through the details on how to get that done on private property versus public property. So we are getting close. We are asking for additional funding as a part of our state application, and we also need to do some fairly detailed planning about every single bus stop needs to be an inventory needs to be done. To see if it is at all possible to bring it up to ADA code. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we are starting to put the pieces in place to actually get to the place where we're starting to add amenities. You'll you'll start to see our first couple examples probably in the next 60 days. So we're working through that.
Okay, thank you.
So just to add to that, the problem for Albemarle County for Garland is that our bus stops and amenities have to go onto VDOT right of way. And so Garland, we've had a series of meetings and we're trying to figure out, but Albemarle County is not as involved with this as it's between VDOT and CAT, but we're working through the process. Garland has been great. Carrie Shepherd is helping us. So we're trying to get there. But you're right. We desperately need them in the county.
Thank you.
Yes.
Diantha, I'm just curious, is the requirement that it be on public right of way or VDOT right of way, is that a legal thing? Is that a policy thing? Where does that come from?
Well, it's a matter of Albemarle County roads are all VDOT roads. Our public roads are VDOT roads.
Right.
County roads. In the city, your roads are city roads.
But
ours
Garland
are
was
VDOT.
talking, for example, about putting a bus stop on perhaps on adjoining private property. Is that not permissible in Albemarle?
Oh yeah, we have the 2 bus stops at Stonefield, which are on Stonefield private property.
Okay, I had understood you. I had understood you to say the different. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, but the vast majority of our bus stops are on VDOT roads.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we don't have very many on private property.
So I'll just say there are two different processes that we have to follow. So there's a public process that involves VDOT, and there's a private process that we have to work out with individual property owners. And we're working through those. The examples that we're talking about putting up, and you will see, will be with private properties first as we're working through the VDOT ones. So we'll hopefully have those soon.
It's easier to get the private right now than the bureaucracy of VDOT.
But we're getting there.
Our way through it. It's just taking some time.
Yeah. Okay.
So are there any other questions before we move on, just to make sure there are no other questions about the data? Because this was great data. This is more than we have seen in the past. And I am just thrilled to see that this is happening. So thank you. But are there any other questions from anybody? If not, then Jim, I guess you're going to go on.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. So yeah, this last piece of what we have to present here is potential FY22 service proposals, and it's really it's a starting step to try to address some of those issues we just talked about in terms of transit design. It's not getting it all the way there, but it's a starting point. So a refresher on the existing CAT network, pre-COVID, 13 routes, generally service was 6 a.m. to midnight, very, very limited Sunday service. And I've got some accessibility numbers here in terms of, how many people, minority population and so forth are within 1/4 mile of a bus stop. During COVID, CAT did not change their service coverage at all. All the routes are still operating, but service is ending earlier. It's ending at 9 o'clock. Frequencies were reduced on a number of routes, like the trolley, as an example. And Sunday service has been eliminated. So all that was in response to the huge drop that CAT and every other transit agency in the country saw because of COVID. But CAT talked about, Garland talked about the ridership decline. If you look at some, just system-wide data for the past 5 years or so, annual ridership of CAT's been dropping from around 2.4 million riders a year down to around 2 million riders a year. And that's despite the fact that there has been some service improvements, some service hour increases that CAT's put in. So you look at your productivity, and that productivity has also been declining. So, a reduction of ridership, an increase in service hours means, fewer passenger trips per, every bus hour every hour that a bus is out in service. The graph there, this graph here at the bottom, it just shows the ridership. The blue bars is the summer 2019 ridership by route. The green is fall 2019. So you can see like Route 7 and the trolley really have a boost in ridership when the university is back in session. The red is the ridership that Cat saw this past summer. So you can see like the trolley really took a big hit in ridership.
So can you help us with Route 1 and 9? Where are routes 1 and 9? It says they're the poorest performing.
Sure. So Route 1 it goes south of, well, actually, let me see if I can pull this.
Route 1 goes to PVCC, Woolen Mills. The downtown, it actually hits over near the Riverview Park area. And then it actually, one of the terminus is PVCC. So it's, as we go through this presentation, you'll see that we're making some improvements to all of these areas.
And what's 9, Garland?
That's the route that goes to the health department and the YMCA.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Just does provide a connection to, just wanted to say, it does provide a connection to the Charlottesville High School on the back end.
Okay.
But, yeah.
All right.
So the CAT's budget, before COVID hit, was being funded about 30% county, city, 70% city there in terms of when you look at that split, on a route level basis. So as we talked through potential changes with Garland and his staff, we talked about just kind of what are some of the system-wide changes we need to incorporate. And one thing is knowing that the 9th Street, Avon Street Bridge is closing and how that's going to impact temporarily where CAT does its staging downtown. Another element we wanted to make sure we incorporated in any service changes was having a consistent span of service so that it's more convenient to you have that assurance that you can transfer from one route to another in the evening. So we wanted to kind of have service from like 6 to 11 p.m. On the major routes, and on the lower ridership minor routes, at least have service till 9 p.m. And then we also wanted to restore Sunday service and get that in as well until 9 p.m. As far as the downtown routing during the bridge reconstruction, we talked to CAT about this potential alignment change where buses from the west and south would temporarily use High Street to 9th Street to Market Street and be able to stage on Market Street around 7th and 8th Street there. And then buses from the north and the east, they would also stage there on Market, but they wouldn't need to really do that full loop, and they could come, return back to the north and the east, like shown here on this diagram. So that was just kind of a base assumption we had for, as we talked through these FY22 improvements for a temporary basis there, this revised downtown staging location. And then Garland talked to us about some other objectives that have been expressed in the past, for any sort of service changes. One was to provide service on South First Street, south of downtown. Another was to provide service to the center on Rio Road. A key desire to restore Sunday service. And then we talked collectively about just really wanting to make sure that any changes that are contemplated really try to make sure we have 30-minute or better service on some of the key corridors of the city, the US 29 corridor, Avon Street, 5th Street, and not have any frequencies worse than 60 minutes. You saw that table I showed earlier where there were some routes operating at 70-minute frequencies, just to get back to 60-minute frequencies or better, so that you can have the opportunity to create some time transfers between routes. And then also to get the trolley service back to 15-minute frequencies. I don't know, Garland, do you recall offhand, is that what, running around like 40-minute frequencies right now, something like that?
About 30 minutes, but you know, we want to improve that because I think when we get the university back, students back, our ridership will drastically improve on that route.
Yeah.
I was going to say that would never have worked for me when I was at the university and taking it downtown to grab something to eat.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we've defined here, and we'll be going through route by route, are you know, we got kind of a lower and upper limit proposals here on several routes. The lower level just tries to get, you know, it's a budget neutral pre-COVID scenario there, where it's just, you know, working within the CAT service hours that they were running pre-pandemic, but with a number of service modifications. Whereas that upper limit increases the service hours, you know, and would require additional funding, and it reflects a 27% increase in service hours overall. And with that 27%, we try to, you know, expand weekend service on some key routes, improve some frequencies on some key routes, and add some additional service between UVA and the US 29 corridor. And you'll see all that here momentarily.
And I would just say, as he's going through this is kind of our starting point for real discussions with the, you know, the lawmakers, the city council and board of supervisors about what is it that you want. And we will provide that level of service based on, and think about this as a cafe style model. So you can get what you want. You don't have to take this form out. You can pick and choose because it's pretty much interchangeable. It's just, you know, it depends on the cost associated with whether you want the higher or the lower. So you don't have to take just everything in the lower. If you wanted something from the higher, as long as we can afford to pay for it, then we can actually run that model too.
So starting with Route 1, you know, which was one of those poorer performing routes, it's really a coverage type route. It's a 60-minute frequency route. It's just, you know, it was carrying pre-pandemic just 150 riders a day. We looked at and considered a number of changes, but in the end, we thought, well, there are other areas where we'd like to focus, you know, valuable resources to and make improvements to, because yeah, so for the near term, at least for FY22, we suggested to just let the routes, this route in particular, stay as is so we can focus on other routes. But we do have two options here. Option one is just getting the route back to how it was pre-pandemic, which was weekday service only. Option two is to add Saturday service. This is the one route in CAT that does not operate on Saturday. And so it would certainly be nice, even though it's a poor performing, very low ridership route, to get that on a Saturday service, you know, so that the whole network's operating on Saturday, we thought would be beneficial. So you can see here, there's a table, each of these routes, you'll see a map that shows the alignment, proposed alignment, and then you'll see some revenue hour numbers. So you'll see like what Route 1 was running 4,100 hours a year pre-pandemic. Pandemic, when the evening service was reduced, it was down to 3,800 hours. So with option one, just getting it to pre-pandemic levels, it's getting it back to 4,100 hours. Option two, adding that Saturday service, is going to require another 800 hours and get it up to 4,900 hours a year. So you'll see this kind of consistent look here on each route. So Route 2, we do have a number of modifications here. Route 2 today is a big one direction loop. It goes south on 5th Street and then goes north on Avon Street, back north, back to downtown. And what we really wanted to do was run this along Monticello and Avon bidirectional, and having at 30-minute frequencies, all day frequencies, 30-minute frequencies, and then split it where a pattern running over to through 5th Street Station to Willoughby Square, and then every other trip coming down through new service, new coverage here in the county along Mill Creek Drive on up into the PVCC complex there. So it's, providing some new service that doesn't exist today, providing additional connectivity to PVCC as well. And we only have one option. We didn't look at two options on this one. It was proposing this, as a single proposal for Route 2. So you can see it's a big jump in service hours. Pre-pandemic, Route 2 was running at 5,700 hours a year. With this sort of change, it bumps it up to 9,600 hours a year. But we just felt like that two-direction service on Avon Street, that connectivity to both Fifth Street Station to PVCC would be very beneficial in this part of town. It also helps Garland as well because it goes right by the existing CAT maintenance facility. So for driver reliefs, that 30-minute all-day service would be, helpful for bringing drivers up to the transit center to relieve drivers.
And Jim, I'm sorry to be so dumb, but WB stop, I'm sure it makes perfect sense, but I don't, what is?
Oh,
WB?
westbound, I'm sorry.
Westbound, okay.
Yes,
I
yeah,
just
so.
don't think that way, sorry.
No, I'm sorry, thank you for pointing that out. So yeah, right now, this Route 2 operates only eastbound through the Fifth Street Station complex. So we have identified here, like if CAT wanted to make this change, move forward with this change, there's going to need to be, we're going to need to work with the shopping center folks there to find a place to make a stop in the westbound direction as well.
Mhm.
Route 3 is, whoops, I went to, Route 3 is running along Fifth Street and is, I think an example we held up there as a, it's really very linear, strong service there. Right now it operates 30 minutes in the peak periods and 60 minutes in the midday. And so we're suggesting that really would be beneficial to run this 30 minutes all day long.
And Route 3 goes where, Jim? We don't, where's it?
So it's from downtown along Fifth Street, past Willoughby Square, down to Old Lynchburg Road to Hickory Street, like shown here on the map.
Right. Oh, I should have looked at the map. I'm sorry. I guess I could have figured it out.
No, that's right. There is a piece of the 3 that operates kind of southeast of downtown as well, where it really doesn't warrant that 30-minute all-day service. So we're suggesting breaking it up, and that piece still operate at 60 minutes, but get that 30-minute all-day service on Fifth Street. So now you have Avon Street, Fifth Street, with 30-minute all-day service on weekdays. To serve, the area south of downtown.
So Jim, I'm keeping an eye on the time. We have 10 minutes.
Oh, I better go faster then. Thank you.
Presentation.
I get going on transit. Route 4, really no changes from what it's operating like today. Route 5 was one where we looked at, changing its terminus there to just still running the same area it does, but had 2 options. One where it ends at Barracks Road like it currently does today. One where it's extended to UVA Hospital, so you get that extra service, along that extra connectivity between UVA Hospital and the US 29 corridor. Route 6 was one of the changes that Garland asked that we looked to get service on First Street South. So that's what's reflected here. 7 and Route 7, that's a key route, one of the highest ridership routes for CAT. So we want to make sure that stays as a strong route and extend it up to the Walmart on weekdays. Route 8 was kind of a proposal we had here where providing some crosstown connectivity between Willoughby Square and the US 29 corridor without people having to go downtown to make that travel movement. So using 9th Street, 10th Street, Preston Avenue to have a new crosstown route. And Route 9, we had two options here. It's one of the poor performing routes where the second option we had was to try to strengthen it, was to connect Route 9 to the US 29 corridor to, a major destination at its endpoint. Route 10 operates out into the county across the river. So we try to do some cleanup of the alignment there. And this is one where if it was possible to afford it, we'd love to see 30-minute all-day service in this corridor as well. So that's an option too.
So this one goes to Martha Jefferson.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Got it.
Route 11 goes up Rio Road to Fashion Square Mall, and we were asked to look at modifying this so that it can serve the center at Belvedere. And so unfortunately we can only do it one direction because there's not a traffic signal at Rio Road and Belvedere Boulevard, but it's near the end of line, so at least would provide that service that's been requested. And then the trolley, getting it back to 15-minute frequencies, getting it back running on McCormick Road through the UVA campus is a high priority. So I've got a map here that just shows kind of what the lower and upper limit networks would look like. I think the thing to maybe to focus on is the green. Any alignment you show that you see on green is a route that's operating at 15 or 20-minute service, so high frequency service. So you can see that the upper limit has more of that. And then there's also more red, the 30-minute frequencies in that upper limit as well. And I know I'm really short on time here, but we did look at transit accessibility here. So that lower limit has some marginal improvements there in terms of accessibility, particularly for 7% improvement for people that would have access to 30-minute or better service. That upper limit does a little bit better, where that especially on weekend service and 30-minute or better service. And then looking at cost. Again, that lower limit was cost neutral from pre-COVID levels. The upper limit was a 27% increase. And this is just kind of showing that split between city and county there. So this is a lower limit proposal where basically there's a little bit of shift of dollars to the county, extra cost of the county, and a little bit of savings to the city. The upper limit, both the city and county, there's additional costs to be able to do something like what's proposed in that upper limit. And that's it.
Okay, let me open it up for questions, folks. And I can see you again. Are there any questions?
My first question is, can we get a copy of those PowerPoints?
Yes, we're going to send it out.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
The only other question I have is I'm trying to set up some 211s so I can actually go through this in more detail with council members. It's really important for you to help us make a decision about the funding and where the priorities are from council.
Right.
Yeah.
And will you be doing that for Board of Supervisors for the routes that are in the county?
Plan to do this whole presentation for the county too, working with Trevor to make that happen.
Supervisor McKeel, Garland and John both are invited to a work session on the budget, which will be later in March. Okay,
great. All right. But it's going to be important for the supervisors to look at county bus services and,
So don't want to belabor it, and I can talk to you more offline. I don't think that work session would be able to get to this level of detail.
Sure.
I expect that maybe could come at a different time.
Mm-hmm.
It's really more about landing the budget and kind of moving forward for in the near term. So
sure, and I understand that. I just think it's going to be important as we move forward for supervisors to be able to look at their districts and
I agree.
And that more. But
absolutely,
I have to be a whole nother. another meeting. All right. Any other comments or questions? This was really very informative. I really appreciate it. This is more data than I've had on ridership. And I get it's just taken a while, but thank you very much. And I saw Karen nodding her head as well too. So those of us, yes, this is good.
Yeah, it took a little while. We had to get the data first, right? So now that we have a process to get it, and then we'll be able to continue to get it and modify it.
I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about having a baseline that happened during the pandemic, but
well, I mean,
did have some back in 19, and
yeah,
I get that.
It was designed for us to show you what we are capable of doing,
right?
Not necessarily using that as the
Yeah.
pure.
Yeah, but I was looking at the data way early on in the presentation and thinking, well, but anyway, it's all good. All right. So I think if there are no more questions, we really today, and we had not planned for our usual round robin because we knew this was going to take a while. I know that's one of my favorites, but we are not going to do that today. So hearing no objections then, we will be coming back on March the 25th, and Jessica at that meeting will be presenting to us because we're going to have to get this, grant, the regional partnership piece locked down. So she'll be bringing something back at the 25th meeting. And Jessica, is there anything else that we're looking forward to at that meeting? I know we'll have that, but anything specific you want to highlight?
No, not yet.
Okay,
we'll figure it out at our agenda setting.
That's all good. So Garland will send out this presentation. And with that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting to March the 25th. And thank you for joining us. It's all good. Bye-bye. Stay safe.